So let's talk a little bit about the G2 Fnatic game. Because that was obviously the big one. Thorin's wearing his G2 Worlds jersey in honor of them not making Worlds this year. You have any initial impressions? Did this go how you thought it would go? Did you predict Fnatic to win?
No, I predicted G2 to win, but I said it was going to be 5 games, so I was pretty close. I mean, now Fnatic has won every series when I was on the analyst desk 3-2, so I guess I'm a Fnatic blessing or something. But I thought it was going to go 5 games, but honestly, from game 1, I could tell that Fnatic was looking sharper, but it was kind of like this random throws that they always do in mid-game that lost them the games. It was not like G2 smurfed every game and then they threw. It was like the opposite. Fnatic threw a bunch of games and it felt like they were going to win.
They could have won even some of the games that G2 won in this series. Especially
exactly,
game 1. Yeah,
could have been like a 3-1 or a 3-0 even if they just were super sharp. And if they were on like Mad Lions peak, but they have their tendencies of throwing in the late game.
I like awkward silences to it, so I'm just purposely going to let that.
Well, I just leave it to.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Whoever speaks first loses the alpha award,
exactly,
so I can't speak
exactly.
first.
There you go.
No, I think what was interesting to me about this series is thinking about G2's future and what they do with this roster. Because I think that there are going to be a lot of really difficult questions about how to move this around, because it's not that they had a terrible split or anything like that. I think the problem with G2 is that they've lost kind of the X factor that made them so incredible. And so now they're a much more standard, much more.
You mean like the tweet I made today where last year, I always say this about how if a team works really well, what's great is like a quality I have seems like it becomes shared by you if you're my teammate. And collectively, eventually it becomes like a hive mind. You can't tell where one ends. The joke is this. Last year, we were all like, the intangibles of G2, it's incredible. They're so clutch and they're moving. And now it's just like the intangibles of perks. Dude, it now just seems, I know it sounds reductive, but it just seems like that was all perks. Like, I'm sorry, it just does. Like, you look at him when he's gone to LCS, that's all he has now is the intangibles. Like, I know it sounds harsh because I'm sure the players are brilliant in their own way in G2, but like whatever they had when he was in the team just doesn't exist in G2 now. Like it's just a group of players.
I think it comes more from like the leadership perspective though than like the intangibles.
What do you think?
I just think it comes more from the fact that they have no leader in their team and they're all just good players, but they don't have anyone to lead them. I think it's pretty simple. And then I think League right now is that only teamwork. You can see Mad Lions, they joke around when they play, they're really close, they play the fights like always the same way. They never like do different stuff in the fight. So whoever is the most like solid unit wins most games. And I think G2 is just not a solid unit, but that doesn't mean that the players are bad.
No, it's not that the players are individually bad, but that's what I'm saying about them being a much more normal team now. There was always the factor of because of their shot calling, because of their ability to make the correct decision in unique scenarios. I think what was so impressive about G2 is basically their style was basically to introduce enough uncertainty and chaos into a game and then play out those scenarios that they could have never seen before almost perfectly, right? That was the magic that they had. And I don't think that Perkz has like brought that to Cloud9. In fact, like I think that's one of their big problems, right? Is that they are playing too aggressively, and so there are situations now that they can't shot call their way out of because of the deficits that they're creating or mistakes that are making. So it's not like he brought that wholesale and he was all of it. It was most likely the contributions collectively of those players and how fast they could collectively decide on the right course of action. But it does seem like both Perkz and G2, although I would say G2 more, have been powered down. And that's why I find the situation with G2 so interesting, because what do you do in this scenario if you're G2? Because you have a good team, but you lost the intangibles that were making you this incredibly dominant dynastic team. And so changes will probably could make you a lot worse, but they could also actually force you to reshift your identity. And I think that's probably needed at this point in time. I think especially the longer the split went on, Wunder and Mickey were both pretty underwhelming overall.
I And you've also got the big problem as well, mate. Here's the reason why being GM is really hard in G2 right now. You can't just cut the players that played the worst. Like you were saying, if you cut Wonder, that doesn't fix the problem either, because the other end of the equation that I think is a nightmare for them is I'm getting the same vibe as when fucking Reckless joined Elements that time, where it's like on paper, they were supposed to be awesome, but they didn't work together. Like there was just some mismatch with how they wanted to play the game. So like, for example, on paper, the two best players in G2 are Caps and Reckless, right? But is this the right team for them to play in right now? Like, it seems to me like Reckless and Caps, they haven't connected in the same way they did in Fnatic in the past. Like something's off about that, you know.
I think it's also just how the meta is shaped as well. Like I think
if you were the
lot of
GM
times.
how would you rebuild this team to make it really good? If you had like obviously in this team you can pick almost anyone. If you had to like take people out of the team, we're saying like you have to do it right to make the team number one next year. What angle would you go with? What would make the best G2?
That's a tricky one. I think you would have to make at least 2 changes, because I think 1 change would not do anything. So it'd have to be, you would have to like reshape the entire dynamic, because I think the problem is also that G2 is not happy making top 2 in the EU. You know, they want to go for international success, and maybe 1 change would bump them up a bit or drop them down a bit, but that wouldn't ultimately matter. So I think it's about like making 2 big changes, and I mean, obviously you would go for the people that are performing the worst, right? I think also the people that add the least to the general like team dynamic and team atmosphere is the best as well. So I don't know the inner workings of G2, so I don't want to comment on that. But I think if I was the GM, then I would just, I would look to improve on the roles that provide more in-game leadership and like a better overall team dynamic. Because I think, they're just good players, really great individual players, but they don't have a lot of direction, I think.
I mean, I think you have to take out, just based on this split's performances. Reckless did have a very good split overall. I don't think you can place the blame on him. In some ways, this is I think what's more disappointing to me is in some ways this is a very good meta for Reckless, in that he could have been left alone in the bot lane, and like I wonder what he would have looked like with Hylissang. And like he is absolutely the guy you want to just play conservative and then break out in some of these team fights. So for me, it was kind of lame to see him go out like this, because I wonder what he could do. But on the other side, you really see a lot of the issues with Mickey not being the playmaker on the map. I think that the Mickey Hylissang difference in this series was absolutely enormous. I think Hylissang is just like fucking built, for this particular meta. Yeah,
it's actually perfect Hylissang meta. Yeah.
It's amazing for him. So like I was thrilled for him. But Wonder and Mickey are in very crucial roles in this meta, where top lane is incredibly important right now, and we're just not seeing that same level of performance. And I do think to a certain degree it's inexcusable, his performance versus Adam in this best of 5. Because like I was very critical about Adam earlier this split, because he comes in as like a new player, and they start playing around him and kind of his weird like top Olaf and everything like that. And my question is, why are you trying to play around this rookie's ability to carry you? And I was concerned that was really his only style. And I think in this series you saw that it wasn't. And I think over the course of the playoffs, you've seen that he's diversified a lot. I think he's played very, very well. So he has alleviated, I think, a lot of the legitimate concerns you would have about maybe this, his team having to play around him. But even
in the mentality series, maybe, but it was his first playoff series, so whatever.
Yeah.
That's whatever.
Yeah, I was watching all the series in detail, right? Because I was analyzing them, and I think Adam was the most impressive player on Fnatic throughout playoffs so far. I think he did more than anyone expected, and also the way that Fnatic changed their styles in the games around him was also impressive. So I think, Wunder definitely had a terrible split and terrible like playoffs against Adam specifically, but also Adam, like, honestly, he played really good. So I think even if he was a rookie, I think, he just played fucking good, and that's what's required from him in this team.
That tweet he did, though, Monty, is still one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, where he tweeted in French. He basically tweeted in French, and the gist was sort of like, oh, wow, this is like a loser bracket, and we can still win. Like he
sure
he thought he was in like a gauntlet, Monty, and this was just like for the last world spot or something. For real, this is before this last game. Yeah, he didn't know he was in like the lower bracket. And you can still, in theory, win. That's why I did a mean joke, which actually is not looking that great now. But at the time, I was like, someone inform him that he actually can't win because he plays for Fnatic, whatever. It's just fucking mean, isn't it,
Oh, that's so adorable though. Like honestly, players are the worst like people to know the brackets. This happens to me a lot too. I'm just like, so what do we do now? Like, who do we play in first round? And then I just get the info to me. Like, what's happening? Like, am I playing? So I'm not really surprised that it happened to a player, but it's kind of funny because his reaction was so genuine.
Yeah. So anyway, like I don't think he's by far or close to like the best top laner, but I do think that he's diversified enough, and he's having. But anyway, my point is this shouldn't happen. Like Wunder, given his history, this should be a game that Wunder should be able to step up if he was capable of having the form that he's had in the past. And I think that was what was kind of disappointing to me about this whole series was that, especially in Game 5, man, like that Camille Darius matchup where he just got TP'd on after he got the solo kill and then just died for absolutely no reason. It's like he needs to stay strong in order to provide the pressure on the map, and just making very questionable plays. I didn't really understand where he was at in terms of his headspace or his skills in this matchup. So it was a bummer. I mean, I think if you're a longtime G2 fan, and I think that everybody in the West, like you don't even have to like G2 to admit that their style historically has been incredibly impressive, incredibly entertaining. They have been the Western hope, and they had some sort of magic to them that was unique, and I think we hadn't really seen a team like that probably since like Moscow 5, right? That had some extra element to their something very special about them. And so it's depressing to watch this. It's depressing.
Oh,
here's the thing, though. I'll give you some light. I'll spin it the other way, though. Here's how you actually know that this year has actually legit impressed people in Europe. Because on paper, if you see the lineup that G2 has, if you say at the beginning of the year, this team completely, none of them get to go to Worlds, that would be depressing. Be like, look at all the talent that you're going to lose. Actually, Europe can not send G2, and it's still going to have some good teams at Worlds. It's still going to have some very good players there. Like, that whole narrative at the beginning of the year of like G2's ruined LEC and they've made all the best players in one team, that's not even true anymore. Like, actually, we saw this mad parity in the league. We've probably never been stronger in LEC right now at the top end, Yeah,
I mean, MAD are looking like the old G2 kind of in the splits, where they just look like no one can touch them. And even though they've shown like signs of, like trolling or choking or whatever, they in every important playoff series, they're always the best team right now in the EU at least. So it looks like the LEC is going to them unless someone really steps up big.
I also, by the way, Monty, a few weeks ago, I think it was maybe a week ago, there was an interview with Humanoid where the headline was like this. He was talking about like being clutch. And what's great is this is how you know he is a great European player, Monty. Because in Europe, the way you trash talk's different. The American way of trash talk is like this. It goes, I'm the best, I'm better than you. That's the premise, right? In Europe, what you do is this. You just go, no, you're just worse than me. And that's actually like there's a distinction there, because Humanoid said something along the lines of like it just seemed weird that like all these other teams just didn't have any clue how to play the mid game. It's not that he thinks they're mid game geniuses or macro geniuses. He just thinks all the others have no clue what they're doing. It's just easy. So that's an interesting distinction to make.
It kind of looks like it when you're watching too, though. Like it looks like they're just making the logical and correct decisions, and other teams are like fucking up. But it's also, I know myself as a player that it's not as easy as it looks. Obviously, Mad Lions are just the best team at forcing errors, and I think that's really important in this meta, which is very mid-game and teamfight dependent. Like, early game can go so-so, but if you have a comp that's actually good in mid-game, then almost any team can win.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.